Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well. The 2023 car reveals are done and dusted. Alpine have finally come out with their car to round out all 10 of the car reveals for this 2023 season. A lot of black in there, isn't there? But that's not what we're talking about today. I'm going to give you my Constructors Championship predictions from 10th place all the way up into first. To be honest with you, I think it breaks down into kind of 4 sections, but I'll go through that as I go along. Here are my predictions for the 2023 Formula 1 World Championship. In 10th spot, I've got Williams Formula 1. I just can't see a world in which they get back into that lower midfield pack. I know that we saw Alex Albon put in some incredible performances in 2022. I think he was really good driver for them to bring in for that season and going forward. I think Logan Sargent is an upgrade on Nicholas Latifi, and I like the fact that James Vowles is coming in to lead the team from Mercedes as well. I think all of those things are positives moving into this season, but they've just got such a big gap to overcome. I can't see them overcoming it that quickly, and therefore I think they're still going to be 10th in this season. 9th place, I've gone with AlphaTauri. Now, I actually think that 7th, 8th, and 9th are all very interchangeable, and all 3 of those teams that I'm going to talk about could interchange their places in this kind of lower midfield band, but I've gone for AlphaTauri in 9th place, mainly because I think Pierre Gasly, that loss to the team is going to be quite big. It's going to take Nick De Vries a little while to settle into that AlphaTauri team. I know he's experienced, wins Formula 2, wins Formula E, doesn't quite get that Formula 1 seat straight away, but he's been around the block, and I don't think it will take him ages to get used to Formula 1, but I do think he'll have a settling in period, as well as Yuki Tsunoda. I don't know if the Japanese driver is really going to step up in this 2023 season. It's his 3rd year in Formula 1. He's now, the most experienced driver in that team, and the team are going to be expecting big things from Yuki Tsunoda now in that AlphaTauri car. He was getting better towards the end of 2022 and during the 2022 season. That gap to Pierre Gasly was slowly closing, but still, I'm not quite sure what I want from Yuki Tsunoda, and therefore AlphaTauri, can't see them improving massively. I've put them in 9th spot. In 8th place, I've gone for Haas in this kind of lower midfield band. I think that Haas, moving into this 2023 season, we're expecting a bit more consistency from them. They obviously worked incredibly hard on the 2022 car during the 2021 season. Came out of the blocks in 2022 incredibly well. Look at Kevin Magnussen now at the beginning of the 2022 season, racking up the points. Yes, you could argue he left quite a lot of points on the table because of those first lap incidents and various bits and pieces that went wrong for him over the course of the season. But for me, Kevin Magnussen is the real shining light of Haas. Basically, since they've been in Formula 1. I absolutely love that combination of Kevin Magnussen and Haas, and I can see big things happening there for them again in 2023. Maybe not another pole position, but a few point scoring races and a few exciting moments for them. Then we've got Nico Hülkenberg coming into the 2nd seat to replace Mick Schumacher. I think this is quite a boring pick from Haas, but I think they wanted a boring pick. I think this is exactly what they wanted moving forward. They wanted consistency. Gunther Steiner was bored of having to make excuses for Mick Schumacher and make excuses to the team as to why they were spending money repairing the car as opposed to actually pushing themselves forward. Now they can get a little bit closer to the budget cap with MoneyGram coming in. Now that they hopefully won't have as many crashes to deal with over the course of the season with Nico Hülkenberg, maybe they can start to push forward a little bit more. And therefore, that's why I think this bottom 3 is interchangeable, but I've gone for Haas in the middle. And then in 7th place, rounding out this lower midfield 3, I've gone for Alfa Romeo. As I said, I think 7th, 8th, and 9th are fairly interchangeable, but moving into this year, I quite like the Alfa Romeo car. I like the design features that they've gone for on the car that we've seen from the reveal, but I also like the team dynamic. I know it's going to be quite a turbulent season because Alfa Romeo are coming out of this partnership at the end of the year. They're then going to be Sauber for a couple of years and then Audi into 2026. But I think they have a really good driver pairing. If you look at the driver pairings that are down there, Yuki Tsunoda, Nick De Vries, Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hülkenberg, I like Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas the most, I think. Mainly because of Valtteri Bottas. I think Bottas, when it comes down to it, can really deliver when he's given a car that he's comfortable with. And actually, I'm really excited to see what Zhou Guanyu can do in his 2nd year in Formula 1. I think he had a really good rookie season that was plagued by issues because of the power unit. Hopefully, that Ferrari power unit is a little bit better this year. And therefore, they're going to have more consistency when it comes to those races. Also, I like the fact that, yes, Vasseur is gone, but Seidel has come in, and know that he's working for Audi, but you'd imagine he's going to have a little bit of input on the Formula 1 side of things, even though it is still Alfa Romeo at this moment in time, and I just really highly rate Seidel, and I think he's going to drag this team up towards those midfield pack, especially when Audi come in. This is probably the most difficult part for me, and I've gone for Alpine in 6th place. Again, I think 4th, 5th, and 6th are very interchangeable, and I'll talk about each of them as we go along. But Alpine, for me, just moving into 2023, I could see them dropping off just a tiny little bit. I know that Esteban Ocon actually outscored Fernando Alonso over the course of the 2022 season, but Fernando Alonso for me was still the better driver of that Alpine pairing. I can also see Pierre Gasly coming in. He struggled with the 2022 AlphaTauri, and that was a car that was basically built around him. Whether or not he's going to be able to adapt to this Alpine car, I'm not 100% convinced upon. I really like Pierre Gasly, and I love him as a driver, but I need to be convinced by him in an Alpine car. On top of that, I think the battle for points is going to be really, really competitive this year. Obviously, if you take out the top 6, you're only fighting for 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th place. And when you've got 6 cars that are all vying for it, I think those Alpines might come unstuck a little bit. Especially when their reliability is all down to them. Fernando Alonso was plagued with reliability issues over the course of the 2022 season. And because Alpine build their own car, they manufacture their own engine, that is all down to them. It's not like they can look to Ferrari for a better power unit or look to Mercedes for a better power unit. It's all on them to improve everything about that Alpine car. Which leads me into 5th place, and I've put my team McLaren in at 5th place in the constructor standings. I'm very, very hopeful for this 2023 season, but also very, very worried about this 2023 season, as I feel like there's a lot of things that could go wrong for McLaren here. First and foremost, we've seen the car, the livery, the reveal, etc. But alongside that, the team were talking about how they hadn't quite made the progress that they wanted to over the winter break. And that doesn't fill me with a lot of hope when they're saying, okay, we need to bring upgrades to the first 5 or 6 or 7 races over the course of the season. And we're still going to be trying to figure out what's best for the car over the course of those first few races. We've seen from last year, if you start off electric, you can maybe sometimes just sneak your way into some points that you don't really deserve over the course of the year. You know, we're looking at Kevin Magnussen's 5th place in Bahrain. We're looking at Valtteri Bottas finishing in the top 6 over the course of the first 6 races because they just came out of the blocks really, really on fire. McLaren seem to be doing the opposite of that in this 2023 season. Although having said that, we've got Lando Norris at the helm still, coming into his 5th year in Formula 1. I'm really excited to see what he can do now. By far and away the best of the rest driver last season. I think if you're one of those top 3 teams, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, and you've got a seat coming up, Lando Norris is the first person you ask. He is phenomenal right now. By far and away one of my favorite drivers to watch, and I'm so glad that McLaren have been able to keep hold of him for another season. How long we're going to be able to keep hold of him, I'm not so sure about. And then we've got Oscar Piastri coming in. Oscar Piastri is a little bit of an unknown. He's put himself under lots and lots of pressure. Obviously, he's won back-to-back championships before taking that testing role at Alpine. So I'm very excited to see what these two can do together. I think Lando Norris is just going to continue to go from strength to strength. You look at the past 2 seasons, he has come on leaps and bounds in those last 2 seasons, and I think again will be that driver that we're looking at as basically guaranteed 7th place every single time around. And then when it comes to Oscar Piastri, who knows? He could be absolutely amazing straight off the bat, or it could take him a little while to adjust, but I do think he'll get there, and therefore I think McLaren can sit in 5th place in this championship, and I'm fairly happy with that. Although the keen-eyed of you will have noticed that I've left Aston Martin to go into 4th place in the constructor standings. And even though I think Lando Norris is going to have a wonderful season at McLaren, and even though I do really rate Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, I think that Aston Martin coming into this year, it has to be their year, right? They've said every single season. In 2021, they gave up halfway through for the 2022 season. In 2022, they gave up halfway through for the 2023 season. This now has to be it for me. They've finally got their factory finish. They finally seem to have all the pieces of the puzzle together. They've got Fernando Alonso in to replace Sebastian Vettel. And I think on form right now, Fernando Alonso is an upgrade on Sebastian Vettel. Although that might be a little bit controversial to say, I think if Alpine had delivered Fernando Alonso a car in 2022 that didn't blow up every other Grand Prix, he probably would have finished ahead of Lando Norris in terms of the driver's standings, and I think he would have ended up that best of the rest driver. Then on top of that, alongside Fernando Alonso, we've got Lance Stroll, who I think now really has to step up for me. What is this, his 7th or possibly 8th year in Formula 1 now? And we're still talking about this talent, we're still talking about a young driver, of course, but I think it's now time that he steps up. It's now time that he really shows his colours, and I think he needs to be basically battling with Fernando Alonso in the Drivers' Championship. He needs to be at least keeping up pace. If you look at the gap between him and Sebastian Vettel last year in terms of the driver standings towards the end of the year, he needs to be closer to Fernando Alonso for me. I think this is the year that he can really step forward. I think this is the year, therefore, that Aston Martin can really step forward, and I'm backing them. I'm saying it's going to be their year, and I think they're going to finish 4th in the Constructors' standings. Moving into the top 3 then, the punchy end of the Formula 1 grid, and I've gone for Ferrari in 3rd place. I know that Ferrari fans are going to be very, very angry at me. Charles Leclerc fans are going to be very, very angry at me because they think he's going to be battling for a Drivers' Championship. And hey, if you're a Ferrari fan, I am more than optimistic that they could end up finishing in 1st place. Again, I think this top 3 are very interchangeable in where they could finish. But for me, Ferrari are going to go in 3rd. I think Vasseur coming in, He's not an upgrade on Binotto to me. I think Binotto really understood Ferrari and the ethos at Ferrari. I think the problems go deeper than the team principle when it comes to Ferrari and Formula One right now. Also, on top of that, I think Leclerc and Sainz, as much as they're an incredible partnership, I just think Leclerc has too many mistakes in him. Maybe 2023 is the time where he gets those mistakes out of the way, but he has too many mistakes in him. Also, Carlos Sainz took ages to adapt to the 2022 regulations. He got better and better and better, yes, but still, I'm not sure he was 100% there, and I think of those kind of top 6 drivers, he was still in that bottom end for me over the course of the season. Although I don't think you can blame those 2 drivers too much for what happened in 2022, because I think it was like a systemic error within Ferrari. They just made so many errors over the course of the season, whether it was mechanically and the reliability issues that they had with their engine, whether it was the team making weird strategic errors over the course of the year as well. Just seemed like every single race there was something that went wrong with Ferrari, and I don't think Vasseur fixes that within the first few months of him being there, or even the first year of him being there, because Binotto had been there for like 20 years, and he still wasn't able to really fix those problems that he had at Ferrari. And that's why I want to put Ferrari at the bottom of this top 3. Again, I think all 3 of these teams are very interchangeable, and maybe Ferrari find that power unit problem and they're able to fix it for this 2023 season. They jump right up to the top of the World Constructors Championship and I look absolutely stupid. That is more than likely to happen, but also for me right now, in terms of where Ferrari are at, in terms of Vasseur coming in terms of the driver pairing they've got all the ingredients to win a Constructors Championship, but for some reason, I just don't think they will. Which means in second place in the Constructors' Championship, replacing Ferrari, I've gone for Mercedes as my runners-up in 2023. And I think 2022 was a massive disappointment and a massive learning curve for Mercedes. And I don't think Toto Wolff and Mercedes let that happen again. This is basically my blind faith that Mercedes will improve. I think the fact that they've stuck with the zero pod idea gives me the feeling that they've hit onto something for this 2023 season that is going to improve their car and make them a little bit more competitive. Obviously, towards the back end of last year, they were starting to look better and better. Lewis Hamilton finished second on the podiums, what seemed like every single Grand Prix. Obviously, George Russell also picking up a win in Brazil. They were finding a little bit of momentum. And again, it's Mercedes. And maybe it's just blind because Formula One fans are just so used to Mercedes winning everything at this moment in time. You know, 7 championships with Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, and it just felt like Mercedes were always winning in Formula One, and that then just leads you to be like, oh, they'll just continue winning forever, right? And maybe this is the turning point. As I said, I've only put them in second place in the Constructors' Championship, but at the same time, I do think they're going to improve, and I do think Lewis Hamilton will get a few wins, George Russell will get a few wins. I think that is the strongest driver pairing on the grid right now. I was flip-flopping between Mercedes and Ferrari, having the strongest driver pair between them. I think Mercedes is clear now. After the 2022 season, George Russell stepping into that car and being so incredibly consistent. I think he is phenomenally good for Mercedes moving forward and definitely the future of that team. Also, Lewis Hamilton coming back in, not winning a race in 2022. I think he looks reinvigorated, revitalized. He looks ready for this 2023 season. I think he looks hungrier than we've seen him before. Maybe it was that 2021 disappointment leading into 2022 and the fact that it wasn't working straight away. He kind of lost a little bit of momentum with Formula One. I think he looks really excited for 2023. George Russell looks really, really excited for 2023. Mercedes look ready for 2023, all black, all again, and I'm very excited to see what they can do. But I don't think they're going to be able to improve enough to overcome Red Bull, who I've got top of my Constructors' Championship predictions, going back-to-back with World Constructors' Championships. And what more can you say about Red Bull? They were just so far ahead in 2022 that I think they're going to remain ahead in 2023. Yes, obviously they lose out on some aero time because of the budget cap situation. Less said about that, the better. Yes, of course, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez's relationship looks weaker and weaker every single week now. We can go back to Brazil, the arguments they had. Maybe they've been able to fix that over the winter break, but I think there's still going to be a little bit of tension between the two. Even having said that, I think that the car is just so much further ahead of everybody else. The reliability that they showed over the course of the 2022 season, the tenacity that they showed over the course of the 2022 season, it was almost robotic-like, right? Especially when Max Verstappen was just going back-to-back-to-back victories, ended up with 15 wins over the course of the 2022 campaign, and you don't get that unless you are almost reptilian in your ability to just keep on winning, to keep on showing up and just being the best out there. And Red Bull did that every single time around. It felt like the pressure was getting more and more on them. There was loads of stuff going on behind the scenes that Max Verstappen was also having to worry about, and yet he still turned up and delivered and won every single Grand Prix that was available to him. And when he didn't, Sergio Perez picked up a couple of wins too. Yes, I know Charles Leclerc won a few races, Carlos Sainz, George Russell also got wins, but you know what I mean. Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez basically won every single Grand Prix over the course of the 2022 season. In terms of the points they had at the end of the year, they absolutely smashed it as well. Most points in a season from Max Verstappen of any driver ever. I just don't see a way in where anybody can touch Red Bull over the course of the 2023 season compared to 2022. I think Mercedes is going to be closer. I think Ferrari are going to be closer. I think it's going to be more competitive, but I still think Red Bull are going to run away with it. But that's just my thoughts and feelings going into the 2023 season. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. What would your Constructors Championship look like from first place to 10th place? Do you think I've put Aston Martin in the wrong place? Kind of looking at it, that midfield three, Aston Martin, McLaren and Alpine, that's where I'm most, could be convinced by one of you guys to change my mind a little bit there. But as I said, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Whilst you're down there, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I'll see you next time.